I just want to thank Larry for letting us use this space and for always being, I remember being in your bookstore when I was a 22-year-old kid, always looking in the poetry stacks. It's probably the first place where I started reading poetry, actually. And it's great to be reading with Elaine and Jeff, two teachers of mine, two people that kind of taught me what a writer is, really. Like, when you first start out, you think it's all like fame and glory, right? And you find out, oh, it's work and more work, and that's where the love of it comes from, right? So it's great to be here reading with these two, and also Quentin is here. I haven't seen Quentin in 35 years. We grew up on Allison Street.
Yeah, man.
You'll recognize some of the landscapes in some of these poems. And Chris Brennan, who I went to high school with, who I probably haven't seen in over 20 years, right? You'll recognize some things here too. So I'll start out with just a poem. I like overhearing things. I like writing poems about that. I'm a nosy person. I don't talk much to people, but I'm very nosy. I listen to things all the time. And this is based on something I heard, but it's fictionalized mostly. But it's called At Rotten Ralph's. Tyrone is cursing the game. What's it matter? They got black holes now. Just a dead piece of star that eats up everything that comes across. One could show up without no warning and suck us up into oblivion. They say nothing can escape. And they say nothing in the whole universe is as bad. Shit, I got ex-wives that give them holes a run for their money. One giant leap my ass. And this next poem is about railroad tracks. When I was growing up in Southwest Philly, we used to go to railroad tracks. So I'll tell you the brief story of the reality of this poem, but I turned it into something else. Because the reality of it is kind of I'll explain that later. But it's called Tadpoles. It was tadpole season, the end of spring. Summer was around the way. We booked past Double Dutch girls, Miss Wilson's nosy glare, through alleys jumbled with weeds. We crossed 60th Street and Chester Avenue, traversed enemy corners, dog packs chasing us, fiends begging for quarters. Lamont's mom's was on the pipe again. Boo's pops had stepped out for Camels and never came back. Our Adidas floated. We were latchkey kids, but we called ourselves Chill Crew. We came to the traffic on 65th, fleeing prisoners, dodging cars and curses to make it to the rocky hill on the other side. At the bottom, railroad tracks overgrown with wildflowers. In the lake, a sinkhole with knee-deep water, a paradise for gnats, mosquitoes, gutter sparrows. We galloped down in hand-me-down cutoffs and t-shirts, backpacks clinking coffee cans. Behind us, boarded up windows and factories tuned quiet. Somewhere our parents mopped floors, sat in cubicles, believing we were in row houses they told us not to leave. This is how it be in the woods, Lamont said, even though none of us had ever been to a forest in all our asphalt lives. Though the tracks were abandoned, we watched for trains, having heard of a boy who walked without looking, how they collected him in pieces for days. Tadpole season, end of spring. Soon the water would steam away. There we waited our cans in the ashy water until one or two gulped inside and slapped the lids on quick. Watch your back, Boo said. Can't never tell when something's coming. The reality of that story is we used to go down there thinking we were collecting tadpoles, but we were like 9-year-old kids who'd never been anywhere near a tadpole. And ultimately I figured out after having a can in my room for a while, they were mosquitoes. We had no this next poem is called Fire Hydrant, and based loosely off the street where I grew up in Southwest Philly. Some of the things that happened. Fire hydrant. Weeks without a breeze on Allison Street. Cars yawned by on the cratered asphalt. The sun leaned in trying to hear our secrets. Teas pop strung out and hustling on the corner. Lamont's kid sister blowing older guys in the alley behind her house. Sherry across the street asking me to pull it out, wanting to see what a white one looked like. The pigeons peered down from their roofs. Old people sat on porches, mouths open to the heat like lizards on rocks. Drunk Mr. Ant, the fired fireman, owned the wrench no one else had. A trapped ocean rushed out, and we leaped and danced in the gutters, undecipherable skins glistening in sunlight. I found Sherry, she found me. We clutched each other close, holding on tight, the deluge all around and able to shove us apart. This is a little longer poem, not too long. If you're in high school and Kurt Cobain died, it was a big deal. You think back though and you go, he was just a guy. But you were like 17 or whatever. And this poem is kind of a conglomerate of a bunch of things that did and didn't happen, I guess. But so it's called The Year of Kurt Cobain. 1. The year Tanya Montez, she of the goth girl wigs and black gowns, and pink bedroom walls covered with watercolor and charcoal portraits. This is one of him as James Dean. This is one of him as Bill Clinton. Another was a study of his heart, red and green, wound with razor wire, sprouting daisies. Daisies may be weeds, she said, but even they need soil to grow. That's why I love him. We'd listened to Smells Like Teen Spirit as she rubbed away unexplained bruises with snowy foundation. When her face was restored, she'd recite from the Song of Songs by memory. I sat down under his shadow with great delight. By night on my bed, I sought him whom my soul loveth. Her every leaning whisper, her lips of scarlet, plummeted me into love. But it was Sean Mencken she sung for. 2. The year of the City Hall rapist, his vague sketched portrait peering out from newspapers. He gathered in the firelight of televisions to learn of the wolf. In bottomless subways, on horror movie streets, his animal breaths lurked the piss-stained stairwells, colonial alleys, stalking crepuscular night for a straggler to sever from the herd. As we traveled buses, trolleys, and cars through blighted neighborhoods, we expected to see him grinning in jaundiced streetlight. 3. The year of Sean Menken's, he of the Boys to Men voice, the mother who worked mornings bagging for Acme, and nights waiting tables at Aramingo Diner. His pops went crazy because of Vietnam, showing up every few months then disappearing again. You learn never to ask Sean about him, because later he'd find reason to throw you to the ground and punch until he drew blood. He was always sorry after, and offered to let you hit him to make things even. I wasn't with him the night he walked into the Express Food Mart on Frankfurt Ave with a 9mm, demanding what was in the safe. Mr. Pang, behind the counter, who knew us since we were small, refused. That's when Sean pressed the muzzle to Mr. Pang's forehead and didn't ask again. 4. The year of Missy Montero, the rapist waiting patient as a monk until she emerged alone from some dive to stagger on uneasy heels into the darkness ahead. He left her unconscious, half naked on the sidewalk beneath the L at deserted front and Burke's. Rain had been threatening to the edge of daybreak, but passed. The sun shone dank Burke Street dim when morning broke. She moaned inaudibly in her unnatural sleep. Somewhere inside she was bleeding, and this slowed her heart until it stopped. Eventually, the rapist went away like storms or locusts, never caught. 5. The year Tanya took the bus every Saturday to Graterford Prison, to step behind its high, hard walls to talk with Sean through cloudy plexiglass, his boy's face with a new bruise every week. The first weeks he grunted his love. Then he only glared, finally telling her to get on with her goddamn life. I watched as she pulled the portraits from the walls and piled them into the bathtub. She shared a bottle of vodka with me, then poured the rest over the portraits. Her hands were steady when she lit the match. The tile room filled with flashing embers that floated up until they dimmed into minuscule shards of ash. She wasn't crying. She never cried. but held my hand as she watched. She would graduate at the top of her class and be accepted on scholarship at Penn. Instead, she packed her life and left. 5 months later, I received a signed postcard telling of yellow Spain and the dust filling the streets of Granada. The boy she found who never raised his fists or voice. It was the year of fleeing, the year of being left behind. This next one is kind of about Yetis, you know, big crazy monster things. Based somewhat on a conversation I had with friends when I was a kid. It's called The Yetis of Fairmount Park. We sat on our knees in front of the TV, stuffing our mouths with pumpkin pie, as the British narrator interviewed budding mountain climbers who described how, on their exhausted way to the summit, they encountered footprints too big to be human, too human to be a bear's. Then Vaughn's older brother Pete told us how he saw them in Fairmount Park. We were small. We needed mothers or fathers to take us. We started to dream turkeys in the Himalayas, distant gobbling peaks that shadowed I-95, the Art Museum, and even towering Liberty Place. All I could see through blurry storms were fangs buck-toothing from beneath black buckled hats. Everything else was a guess. The show didn't say what they really looked like. Vaughn described their ponytails. He was religious, so everything became angel or devil. Boo said they were part wolf, part rat. In this city, though, everything got to have a little rat in it. The week before in social studies, Miss McNally described that first Thanksgiving, the Indians and Pilgrims getting along so well. Pete explained it was all bullshit. How after the Pilgrims were saved by the Indians, they killed off every goddamned Indian. But I wasn't even there, I pleaded to Pete. So, he said, you think history gives a fuck about you? So in my blizzarding sleep, faces appeared. Mom, Dad, and my sister Jude, our candy-giving science teacher, Mr. Simmons, even Gran. We all had pale, sneering faces, muskets ready at our shoulders. Eventually, I stopped listening to Pete. Then he was shot for his Jordans on King Sessing Avenue, 2 up-close bullets to his chest, finding his heart. After that, I stopped dreaming monsters. This one, you've been to the Schuylkill Walk, right? It's really beautiful now, right? I remember when it was just a bunch of weeds, and that's where homeless people and prostitutes went, right? And this is just kind of a poem about that, but also a poem about, you know, losing your house, that sort of thing. It's called Eviction Notice. After it came, my mother went out and walked the trail along the Schuylkill in the high morning heat. This place used to be only weeds and garbage. We called it Hobo Heaven because of the train that ran here, and all the veiled spaces to hide a refrigerator box. Now everywhere it was blooming and oblivious. Juvenile poplars bloated with leaves, peaceful joggers, lovers holding hands. She sat at a bench overlooking the water, a brown froth swirling with plastic debris. She hung her head, wondering how she could tell us the news. What to do, birds asked from the trees. Screwed, other birds replied. She looked back to the river, thinking. That's when she saw the 2 mallard corpses floating towards her on the surface, feathers black and filthy as an engine block. As they passed by, falling into the distance like dreams, she struggled to make out the thin white rope of their necks hanging beneath the murk. It's another river poem I'm going to read, the Delaware. Did a lot of walking around Philadelphia, so. This is called Overtime. Gulls circle the Delaware, a fractured, creeping glacier since February. Last week, beneath this illusion of land, that boy was found lodged in water weeds, the one who disappeared from his cold, crowded schoolyard pen in West Philly. Cataract moon shimmered him just enough to be glimpsed by some dock worker, drunk with exhaustion after a double shift. The worker called 911 to report what he thought it was, but couldn't be sure of what he saw. The dispatcher asked him to look again and describe it, but he said no. The car was promised anyway, and the worker waited a ways off, shoving his chin into his coat collar to protect against the chill. But there was nothing to protect against that silence where the dark place beckoned. You must see what you think you saw. So we returned to the river's edge, where his boot prints led down a steep slope towards the shore. He stumbled carefully, aiming his heels for the luminous places. Then he stopped, and after trying not to see, prepared to open his shut eyes and be sure. Okay, I just have two more. One is a Broad Street poem. I thought it would be interesting from Broad Street. Right? It's called "To the Girl Pirouetting on Broad Street," and it starts with a epigraph from James Wright's "A Blessing." If I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. If I watch you long enough, I might burst into a flock of snowy egrets, and you into a whooping crane. The city sings its electric self into a gravelly whisper, and you twirl and twirl in the frigid wind. I am reminded of my former loves, Anissa bursting into a cemetery willow, Tanya and I into two wrestling pit bulls on her mother's kitchen floor. Within the generous rooms of the moment, there's always the possibility I could burst into a hill, and you into hyacinths, the world into a 59 Thunderbird with the top down, speeding us down any highway to wherever we want to go. This last one is I guess City Hall poem. It's called Field Guide to Philadelphia. A police helicopter buzzes William Penn's perch atop City Hall like some nuked insect from a Godzilla flick. Its antenna lights sweep the streets below for the perp who knocked over the check cashing place on Broad. What a large hat Bill has, a crown hovering above streets and avenues where Ben Franklin once strutted in the latest French fashions. The woman up the boulevard resembles Ben, her gleaming bald spot haloed by snowy tentacles of hair. She journeys her shopping cart towards the park, where a fountain spills electric water, and four spitting cupids grin beneath cherry blossoms, cherry trees frothing blossoms. If you listen closely, you can hear the schuylkill hack up its secrets as it slogs by the museum complex studded with temples. I am stuck at a threshold of don't walk signs, and basketballs thumping the concrete of playgrounds where men argue for the price for this or that. Threats of shooting and promises of blood. The woman vanishes like a silhouette behind a closed shade, and time sneaks like a mugger, as Pop used to say, while resting one calloused hand in my hair, the other free to lift a can of Schlitz to his lips, Chad drawled. So make sure to look both ways when crossing. The woman returns. Her faint figure grows closer until I can make out what looks to be a winged rodent perched on her shoulder. She presents it with her cupped palm, where it feeds on whatever it has to give. Thank you.